That's right, the Forerunner just got AMOLED. That's exciting. What's up? Welcome back. I'm Dave from Chase to Summit, and today we're going to be talking about 3 new GPS multi-sport watches that are coming to the Garmin Forerunner lineup, and that's going to be the brand new Garmin Forerunner 265S, the 265, and the big brother, the 965. Quick spoiler before we go any further, I do have the 265S and 265 in my hands to show you today. Unfortunately, I don't have a 965 yet. It's still in the mail, but I will share some of what I know about that watch in this video today as well, because it is pretty exciting, and I do want to share my opinion about it. As the name implies, these new Forerunner models are successors to the older Forerunner 255 and 955. And you might be wondering, why are there brand new models when the 255 and 955 were released just about a year ago? It's actually 9 months ago at this point. These new watches are nearly the same exact watches with one glaring difference, and that's going to be the displays. As soon as you look at these watches on my table, you will see the difference. On the left, I have the 265S, the 265, then I have the 955 and the 255. And you'll notice the displays on the 955 and 255 are these muted, kind of dim, transflective displays, and even with the backlight on, they are not super bright and vibrant, while on the left, these watches are super bright and punchy and vibrant because these have AMOLED touch-enabled displays. And an even bigger difference in the case of the older Forerunner 255 is that this watch was not a touch-enabled device at all. So as you can see, if I swipe up and down on the screen, nothing happens. I have to use the buttons on the 255, whereas on this new 265, you do have a full touch-enabled display, and it's pretty good. We'll talk about that in a minute. So like I said, these new models are nearly identical to the older models. They're similar in size and weight. They have all the same wellness, navigation, training features, and so on and so forth. And they even share the same GPS multi-band chipset that's been pretty good in my testing so far. And the updated heart rate sensor on the back of the watch here is the same as well between the 255, the 265, and the 955 and the 965. Man, these numbered names on these devices getting pretty confusing. Even though the new Forerunner 265 is basically the same as the 255, it does have one new feature that was missing on the 255, and that's training readiness. That widget is now available on the 265, still not available on the 255, and I found that interesting. And because of all these similarities, I'm not going to call this an in-depth review. It's more of a first look, first impressions kind of thing, because I'm not going to go through every spec and all the details and GPS accuracy and all of that, because I've already done it. It's the same between the 955, the 965, and the 255 and the 265. And if you want to learn all about these devices and all their capabilities, check out my original reviews for the 255 and the 955, which I'll link up here or in the description down below, where you can learn all about these devices. Okay, so let's get back to what's new on these new devices. And like I said, the big deal is that these are the first Forerunner models to feature a big, bright AMOLED display. In fact, the brand new Forerunner 965 features the biggest AMOLED display that Garmin has ever featured on a watch, coming in at a whopping 1.4 inches. And keep in mind, something like the Garmin Epix Gen 2 I have here came with a 1.3 inch display. And we're going to talk all about the 965 later in this video, but the first things first, let's talk about the options and pricings with these new models. So if you look at the table here, I've got the 265 on the left and the 265S on the right, and just like all Garmin's, the S stands for small. That's really the only difference between the 265 and 265S. It's a little bit smaller, it's got a little bit less battery life, but these both come in at the same price point at $449 here in the USA. Now keep in mind, the 255 can be had for about $350 with no music, and if you opt for the music option, you'll pay about $400. So you're paying about a $50 premium to get the AMOLED display on the 265 over something like the 255. Now when it comes to the 965, it's a little bit more interesting because the 965 comes in at $599 here in the USA. And if we look at the 955, that watch starts at $499 with the non-solar version and $599 with the solar version. So if you're looking at the 955 solar, you're now faced with a pretty hard decision. In terms of colors available at launch, on the smaller 265S, there's a white color, there's a black color that I have here, and it's got these yellow accents, which is kind of cool. And then there's sort of a bubblegum pink color as well. The 265 comes in a black, a light blue teal color, and also a white with blue accents, which is the one I have here, and I also think this looks really cool as well. In terms of the 965, that comes in a black and neon green band option, which I'm very interested in. I don't know if you can tell why. It'll also come in a black and gray option and a white and gray option as well. Now let's go ahead and take a closer look at the 265 and 265S hardware. And as you can tell, it looks very similar to something like the 255. So this is the 265 on the left and the 255 on the right. And you can see that they're nearly the same in size, and the design aesthetics are pretty similar, but there are some differences. For instance, the lugs that hold the bands are a little different. It's all filled in on the 265, while there's kind of a groove on the 255. The buttons are also a little different on the 265. And then if we flip the watches on the other side, the 265 has a new start-stop button that has the word run etched right into it, and it's kind of pill-shaped, where the older 255 had a round button. And that's the same for the 265S as well. Another change to the 265 on the face is that they reduced the branding and wording a little bit. Everything's just a little bit smaller and out of the way, just like the Garmin logo at the bottom of the screen is more pronounced on the older 255, while it's smaller and closer to the edge on the 265. These are minor things, but I'm trying to capture everything here. Another little accent that Garmin included on these watches, as you can see, is right at the end of the band. It says the word run in a little accent color. I think it looks kind of cool, but again, beauty's in the eye of the beholder. And if you're not a runner, you might be kind of annoyed that the button says run and the band says run. Maybe you're not a runner, you're a cyclist and you bought a Forerunner. It's something to keep in mind. I think it looks kind of cool because I'm mainly a runner. And for a quick size comparison, I've got a whole bunch of watches on the table here. From left to right, we've got the 255, the new 265, the 265S, the 955, the Garmin Epix Gen 2, and of course, the big boy, the Tactix 7 here all the way on the right, which is the biggest watch on the table. In some additional specs on the Forerunner 265, both of these watches are waterproof to 5 atmospheres or 50 meters. They both have Gorilla Glass 3 for scratch resistance on their displays, and both models do have 8 gigabytes of internal storage. It doesn't matter if you get the smaller or bigger model, they both have 8 gigabytes. Now let's talk about the displays, because that's kind of the big deal here on these new Forerunner models. The 265S is a smaller body, so it's got a 1.1 inch AMOLED touch-enabled display that's 360 by 360 resolution. The larger 265 comes in at a 1.3 inch AMOLED display, and it's got a 416 by 416 resolution. And I did notice a slight difference between these two models. You'll notice on the 265S, it's got this bevel or chamfer to the display. There's kind of an angle that's off to the side where the bezel is around the perimeter of the display, while on the 265, it's more of a rounded display. There's no bevel, it's not chamfered off at such an angle, and it's a slight difference, but it is something I notice in use. And if we compare these displays, I've got the Garmin Epix Gen 2 on the right here, and the Forerunner 265 on the left here, and both of these are set to max brightness, and as you can see, they look pretty similar. To my eye, the Epix Gen 2 might have an ever so slight edge in terms of brightness, but they're really very close and hard to tell apart. Both work great in just about every lighting condition that I can come up with, and I really have no issues with visibility on any of these models. Now I want to talk about the user experience on these new watches, because even though they're essentially the same as the old Forerunner and Fenix watches when it comes to the user interface, there are some differences. The first thing I noticed when I started using this 265 is as I scroll down, there's little animations as I scroll through the widgets. You can see there's kind of a scrolling light that goes across in a different color for each widget. And this carries through a lot of the menus in the watch. Another thing I noticed is that the weather widget is fully animated. So in the background, you can see that it's a bright sunny day and it's 37 degrees out. And that is in fact what it is outside. And if I scroll down, you still have the multi-day forecast and hour-by-hour forecast as well. More importantly though, I've noticed that the responsiveness and lag of the 265 is really good. This watch is very fluid to scroll through. Things just happen instantly. There is zero lag when using the 265. And even when I compare it to the Garmin Epix Gen 2 that I have no complaints about, this watch has always been great for me, this watch actually feels kind of laggy when I compare it to the 265 for some reason, and I don't really know why. I don't know if they've updated the computer or CPU inside or given it more RAM or whatever. There's some difference here. It might even be that the refresh rate of the display on the 265 is a little bit quicker than the Epix Gen 2. I don't really know. It just feels like a more fluid experience overall. Okay, now that we've talked all about the 265 and 265S, what about the 965? Well, for the purpose of this segment, I'll just hold the 955 because it looks similar enough. Like I said, I don't have a 965, but I am excited about this model for a few reasons. The new Forerunner 965 has a waterproof rating of 5 atmospheres or 50 meters, which is the same as the 955, and it's basically the same exact size as the 955, coming in at 47 millimeters in diameter and 13.2 millimeters thick, and more importantly, the weight is exactly the same as the 955, coming in at 53 grams. When it comes to the display though, like I said, it's got a 1.4-inch AMOLED display, which is the largest AMOLED on any Garmin to date, and it's got a resolution of 454 by 454, which is really good. Another nice touch on this new Forerunner model is that they've included a titanium bezel instead of the plastic bezel that was featured on the Forerunner 955. This was a complaint that I've always had. I love the 955, it's a great watch, but I always wish they could bridge the gap between something like a Fenix 7 or the Epix Gen 2 and the Forerunner model and make it just feel a little bit more premium, and that's what they're doing with the Garmin Forerunner 965. Unfortunately though, even though they've included a titanium bezel, they still have not included a sapphire lens, and that would have really sold me on it. It is still Gorilla Glass on the 965, not sapphire like on the Fenix 7 and Epix Gen 2. And when it comes to the battery life on the 965, it's also really interesting because again, it's actually better than the older 955 in some situations, despite having that big AMOLED 1.4-inch display. For example, in smartwatch mode, Garmin claims up to 23 days of use on the Forerunner 965, where the 955 only gets up to 15 days of use. That means you're getting several more days of use with an AMOLED display on the 965, and I find that to be really impressive. Things do change a bit in GPS mode. In GPS only mode without music, you're looking at about 31 hours of use, where the 955 can go for about 42 hours of use, and that will make a difference if you're somebody training for an ultra marathon or a 100-miler or something like that. And if you're interested what it's like to run a 100-miler with a watch like this, check out the video that I'll link up here. All in all, I think these battery specs are pretty incredible for a watch with full-blown mapping, tons of training features, and an AMOLED display with up to 23 days of battery life in smartwatch mode. That's pretty solid. Now, even though the 965 is by and large the same watch as the 955 with basically all the same features, it does pick up one new feature called load ratio. Load ratio is essentially another way to view your training load over time. It'll allow you to view your short-term to mid-term load and allow you to get additional visibility into your training to reduce the odds of you getting injured or having setbacks or overtraining. Unfortunately, I don't have any way to test this until I get a 965 in my hands, so stay tuned for a video down the road where I do a full in-depth test with this new feature. I did ask Garmin about load ratio, and I asked if it would be coming to other Garmin devices. They didn't say for sure or promise anything, but they did imply that it would come to additional devices down the road. Okay, now it's time for final thoughts, my opinions, and the conclusion of this video. I am excited about these watches, but there are a couple of things I was expecting that are missing. The first thing I'm going to talk about here is wireless charging, because if you look back a couple of months, there's a new device that came out called the Vivo Move from Garmin. That watch has wireless charging, and I thought moving forward we would start seeing it on other devices like Forerunners. Unfortunately, not the case. Another feature missing from these watches that I was totally expecting is ECG. So the Garmin Venue 2 Plus, which is another wearable out there, just got ECG with a firmware update a few months ago. And I really expected Garmin to roll this out to all future hardware. I thought every watch coming from Garmin would have ECG. Unfortunately, not the case, and I was pretty surprised by that, especially at this price point. Other than that though, these watches are a pretty sweet package, because if you think about it, previously people would have to make a decision between something like the Garmin Epix Gen 2 or the Garmin Venue 2 series instead of a Forerunner if you wanted an AMOLED display. And those other options may not be perfect for you. If you really wanted a Forerunner, but you really wanted AMOLED, that was a frustrating decision to make. And now you can sort of have your cake and eat it too with the 265 and 965. And now's the time I want to hear from you. Are you interested in the 265 or 965? Let me know in the comments down below. I'd love to hear from you. And let me know if you're just going to go for an older model like the 955 or 255 and what made that decision. I'd love to hear from you. Comment down below. And we did it. We reached the end of this video. If you're still watching, you probably enjoyed it. And if you did enjoy it, I would really appreciate it if you hit that thumbs up button down below and subscribe to my channel so you don't miss more fun videos like this in the future. Also, if you're interested in picking up any of the watches I showed in this video, check out the links in the description down below. Head over to playbetter.com where you can get the best pricing available, free 2-day shipping, and a no-hassle 60-day long return policy, which is pretty awesome. So check out the links down below. And with that, I think I've said everything I need to say in this video. I probably missed something, and if I did, I apologize. Okay, I gotta go now. I'll see you next time. Bye.